Well, good morning, podcasters. Today is Tuesday, June the 10th, 2026. And coming up today, we're sitting down with a true podcasting Hall of Famer. He's been in the game since 2007. He co-founded International Podcast Day, and he's actively helping shape the future of podcasting through Podcasting 2.0. If you've ever wanted to grow your audience, boost your engagement, or just take your show to the next level, you aren't going to want to miss the conversation today. Daniel J. Lewis is here, joins us live on the Podcasting Morning Show, and I can't wait for you to hear from him today. So if you're listening on Clubhouse, hit the share button, top right-hand side of the screen, and share it however Clubhouse lets you. If you want to join us on video, go to podcastingmorningshow.com/join us. And if you're catching us via podcast, YouTube, or LinkedIn, please share this episode with a fellow podcaster.
Ironic Media, helping podcasters launch, polish, and grow great shows. And by Content Creators Accountant, helping creators build real business behind their content.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome again to the Podcasting Morning Show. Thank you so much for being here. I am your host for today, Ralph Estep Jr. Mark continues to be away volunteering at camp. So joining me here in this virtual meeting today, we have producer DR Fay and Alex Baelish. And of course, we have our guest today who DR will be announcing here in just a moment. So DR, if you want to go ahead and make the introductions, let's get right to it.
Absolutely. So our guest today is someone many of us know in the podcasting space already. We respect him and we have probably learned from him at some point. Daniel J. Lewis is a podcasting Hall of Famer, podcast educator, and a creator of the Audacity to Podcast, one of the long-standing go-to resources for people who want to start and who want to improve and who want to grow their shows with more clarity and confidence. Now, what I appreciate about Daniel is that he doesn't just talk about podcasting from theory. He has spent years helping podcasters understand the tools, the strategy, the audience experience, and the decisions that actually make a show work. He's also the founder of Podgagement and Pod Chapters, where he helps podcasters better understand and connect with their listeners. Please welcome Daniel J. Lewis. Hi, Daniel.
Well, thank you very much, DR. I really appreciate it. And Ralph, thank you.
Oh, absolutely, Daniel. And let's get right to it. So let's start at the beginning, Daniel. Take us back to where it all started. When did you first get into podcasting? What was about the medium that pulled you in when you first got started? What brought you over to podcasting?
Well, it was the dark ages of the internet. I was on a dial-up connection at home, and I had about a 90-minute commute to and from my job at that time. It was a dream job, but I was starting to hate the drive. And I'd gone through all of my music collection, all of the audiobooks I wanted to listen to. And then iTunes 4.9 was announced. Now, 21 years ago this month, in June 2005, and someone told me about podcasts, and I thought I'd check it out. And I was immediately hooked because I could find podcasts about exactly what I wanted to listen to. None of this other stuff that they do, the typical things on talk radio, but exactly what I wanted. I can listen to it in the car. I could download it on the high-speed connection that they had at the office. I'd actually play the podcast through the speakers in my laptop computer that was sitting in the passenger seat of my car as I would drive back home. And I was so hooked. And I realized that the way that people were recording podcasts were things that I knew how to do as well. I knew how to produce audio. I knew how to make a website. I could figure out this thing called an RSS feed. And I just felt like back then, the first podcast I wanted to do was a clean comedy podcast. I just wanted to make people laugh. And so I started a podcast, really struggled for the first couple of years, but along the way, learned a whole lot of lessons, kind of the hard way. I'm the type that tends to experiment with things. Like, forget the manual. I'm just going to press every button and find out what happens when I press this button. And so along the way, and because of my background in production and public speaking, I just felt like I have something to share with podcasters about some better ways that podcasting could be done, some ways that it could be innovated on, because I'm more of an innovator than an inventor. And so in 2010, I launched the Audacity to Podcast to help podcasters, give them the guts and teach them the tools to start and grow their own podcasts. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And a business has emerged from that as well. But it all just started because I just felt like I had something else to say in the space.
So when you first started, I imagine the podcasting landscape looked a lot different. How is it? What's changed, Daniel? Has it changed for the better, for the worse, or just tell me what you think about it, where we are today from where you were then.
It's generally changed for the better. We have so many more podcasts now than we used to, which I think is a good thing, even though there are millions of podcasts in the podcast apps and directories. I run this other site. If you look over at podcastindustryinsights.com, that's where I track a lot of these podcast industry statistics and stuff. You can see that there are, millions of podcasts in Apple Podcasts, but only a few 100,000 are actively publishing episodes. So the space isn't overly saturated, but there's plenty of choice out there for people. I tell people who are interested in listening to podcasts, just type in your favorite hobbies into a podcast app, and you'll probably find at least a couple of podcasts about your favorite hobby. That's what's so exciting now, is that there is so much more good content from passionate people. What's also really exciting from the podcasting perspective of making a podcast is the technology has gotten so much easier. Like, with very few exceptions, do we even have to worry about things like mix minus or loudness normalization or EQ or some of these other things. A lot of podcasters, it's kind of laughable in some sense, but a lot of podcasters don't even know they have an RSS feed. And that's, in a way, that's sad, but in a way it's also good, because it means, and it's something that I predicted years ago in a keynote that I gave at a conference, the technology is disappearing. And when the technology disappears, people can focus more on the content, and it allows more podcasters to jump in without feeling like there are these barriers to entry, because the content is what they can focus on. And the technology has made it so much easier to focus on that content.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. What do you find as being the hardest stretch when you went through podcasting? I know I've listened to a lot of your stuff, and you went through a time in your life when you just didn't podcast for a while. Talk to us about that, Daniel, and how did you get back to it once you took a little break?
Yeah, I went through some personal family tragedies that really, really hit me hard. And every time I'd feel like I was back on my feet again, then stuff would happen and knock me down again. And it was really nasty. And at the same time, I needed to focus on what was most important in my life. And that was my son and being a dad to my son. And so that's what I did for years. And I missed being on the podcast. But every time I'd want to start up the podcast again, something would happen and it would knock me down again. And I had that hunger and desire, though, to be back on the microphone. And what eventually helped me get back behind the microphone was going to a podcasting conference again and talking to other podcasters and just talking about podcasting. And I just felt like, oh, I've got so much I want to say again. I have to get back on the microphone. I have to try and make this work. I have to get consistent with the schedule again. And it's been a challenge to be consistent, and it's been a challenge to regrow the audience after having been gone for so many years. But a lot of my audience has been very understanding that, life has been happening. And so many of them stuck with me through the years. But I do sometimes feel like I'm back at the beginning stages of a podcaster, trying to build my audience, or in my case, regain the audience that I might have lost who thought maybe I stopped podcasting.
That consistency is a big deal. And I have to agree with you. You talk about that on the show a lot here. And I'm one of the people that truly believes when you don't have that consistency, people don't look for you and they replace you with someone else. I know it sounds kind of harsh, but Daniel, I just want to say, dude, I throw you a lot of respect for doing what you did, because to take what was important in your life and make that the center, I just have nothing but praise for you. But let me ask you this question. As a new podcaster, what's the one thing that you know now that you wish someone had told you in those early days when you were first getting started? What was that thing that you wish you had known and you would have been your superpower now?
Well, I'll tell you two things, actually, because one of them someone did tell me, and it was what actually got me to start my first podcast, because I wanted to start my first podcast in 2005 when I first started listening. I didn't actually start until 2007. because I was trying to be perfect. So the advice that I heard from a couple of other people at that time is don't wait to be perfect, just start. And that's what I needed to hear. That was the kick I needed to actually get it out there and not try to be perfect with it, but just start. The other piece of advice that I would add to that is start with a plan. Write out a list of your first 25 or so episodes or topics, whether you're a topical show or you're covering books or movies or TV shows or you're interviewing guests. Make a list of what 25 episodes will be. You do not have to script these episodes. You don't even have to prepare anything. They could be dream guests or dream topics for you. You don't even have to do them in order. The whole point is it's a very much a mental exercise for you, is to have that list to know where you're going to go with the show. And that can do a few things for you. One is that gives you something to go back to. If you're sitting down and thinking, oh, I need to record episode 3, what am I going to do? What's it going to be about? Well, look at your list and see which one sparks that interest in you. And that can be your next episode. It can also be something you share with your audience early on to let them know, here's what's coming in future episodes. And I encourage you to add to that list as you go. I've got a list of episode topics that will still, after 435 episodes, I still have a list of episode topics from when I first started that I've never gotten to because I just keep adding to the list. And now my list has enough topics that would still carry me for 2 more years if I didn't keep adding to my list.
So you're from the school of just hit record, I think is what I hear you saying, and just figure it out as you go along, Daniel. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I know it seems counter, but it's both. It's both jump in, but also have a plan when you jump in. So it seems like it's counterintuitive, but the whole idea is the plan that you make, don't focus so much on perfecting the plan. Also, even for your podcast, don't focus so much on perfecting the podcast. Jump in with a plan, but don't forget to jump in.
No, and I think that's really wise advice. Now, before we get on to the next day, we're going to talk about Podgagement here in a second. There's this big push right now for video. And I feel like that's a barrier to a lot of people that would contradict what you just said about just jumping in. Are you doing video now, Daniel? And how do you think about this whole mix now we're moving towards Apple HLS video?
I am recording video for all of my podcast episodes that I do right now, but I'm not doing anything with that video yet, just because I don't have the time to edit it and I can't afford to pay an editor to edit the videos for me. I know there are some AI tools out there right now. I'm just trying to watch my cash flow. So in the meantime, I've got all of this video hogging space on a network storage device, and I'm not doing anything with it. So yes, I am recording video, and I've got a great setup, a great camera for recording all of the video, but not doing anything with it yet. I do anticipate eventually focusing more on clips first, and then also maybe publishing the full episodes. I don't know if I want to go the full route of a video podcast, but this is where things get controversial, is what is a podcast? I define a podcast as having distribution through an RSS feed. And so YouTube, to me, YouTube is not a podcast. Never was, never will be, unless they distribute through an RSS feed. Spotify's own video system that they call podcasts are actually shows. I wouldn't really call that podcasting because it's not distributed through an RSS feed. What excites me about this whole HLS thing is we've had video podcasting since the beginning. I was watching video podcasts before YouTube even was a thing. And then YouTube stole the show. But the HLS thing presents a new way of distributing video content. And what's exciting to see is the renewed interest in video distribution of podcasts and in the podcast apps. Like Apple Podcasts and before it, iTunes have supported video podcasts since the beginning. But now that they're doing it this new way, suddenly, and it frustrates me, some of the articles that are like, video podcasting is coming to Apple Podcasts. No, it's been there this whole time. It's just a new way of doing it. And so this new way is something that a lot of platforms are jumping on board to start supporting, which is surprising me, but it's really good that they're doing it. And you're starting to see podcast hosting companies who have said, we're never going to host video, starting to host video, because the demand is suddenly there for HLS. streaming, which is just simply a different way of providing the media file that works better in the modern system and streaming the video instead of downloading the whole thing first. And it presents all kinds of great opportunities technologically, what you can do with that. But I think that this is finally the opportunity to come back to the decentralization of video consumption. Before this, and even I think still today, when you say video, if you're not talking about a major Hollywood produced show that's in now a dozen different places potentially, but if you're talking about an independent video, oh, did you see the video where Ralph talks about this? Most people are going to think, oh, that's on YouTube. With this new HLS technology and the renewed interest in bringing video as a featured consumption method inside of the podcasting ecosystem, I think that people are going to get familiar with consuming video inside their podcast apps again. And that excites me. And how that will then, how the usage of that will bring out about new demands, new requests, and change the ecosystem for better discovery, better recommendations, better consumption, better engagement, as these things are then brought back into the podcast ecosystem.
Tim's got a question in the chat that I'm going to ask you in just a second, Daniel, but are you saying you're moving to video here? Is that what you're telling us? Is that breaking news here on the Podcasting Morning Show?
No, I am not moving to video. If anything, I would be copying my audio. But for me, audio is still front and center for podcasting that I do, as well as I think for anyone out there thinking of starting a podcast, I think they should still focus on audio, because audio is so much easier to do. It's so much cheaper to do and still get really good results. Some people are saying, oh, the audio podcast is dead. Video is where it's at now. And no, I just completely disagree with that. We're going to have successful audio podcasts for many years to come. You do not have to be in video to be successful. You don't even have to publish video at all if you don't want to. And a lot of people just don't want to, or they can't afford to, because once you jump into video, you are more than doubling your expenses of your time, your money, the equipment that you need. Like, just think lighting. You don't need lighting for an audio podcast. You don't need a video camera for an audio podcast. You can be as ugly as you want to be in an audio podcast, and people will not see you. You do not have to shave. You don't have to do your hair, your makeup. You don't have to worry about what you're wearing. You don't have to worry about the colors, the patterns of the clothes you're wearing. Audio is so much easier. And I think in podcasting, audio still will be supreme, but you do see a lot of people crossing over and copying their content into other distribution channels. And that's what someday I will also do, more video and publish my content also in video. But to me, it's an audio first experience.
Yeah, I'm already doing that. I was pretty quick to jump on this HLS thing, and I'm just doing it from the standpoint of I'm putting out the same audio and video file, but it gives people the option if they want to watch it. But let me get to Tim's question. He's got two questions, actually. Tim says, since I'm at work, I can't come on stage, but my question for Daniel is, what is his strategy to make the most of a podcast conference? We've got this podcast conference coming up in August called Empowered Podcasting 3. What has been your strategy, Daniel, to make the most of those podcasting conferences?
If you are an introvert, I know this can be a little bit of a struggle, what I'm about to say. I'm an ambivert, which is right in the middle. So if I'm lazy, I fall over to the side of introvert. I have to make an intentional choice, but then I can appear to be an extrovert. So that's why I'm kind of right in the middle. Connect with someone. Find an extrovert that you can connect with, that can connect you with other people, but just try and have conversations with people. It's not about being outgoing and super enthusiastic in anything, but just talk to people. Come up with some typical questions that you might ask people. What brings you to this conference? Oh, what's your podcast about? And they'll ask you, well, what's your podcast about? What are you doing in podcasting? You can start the conversations. But here's the very important thing about going to conferences. It's not just about the conversations. It's about what happens after that. So whether you are attending the sessions or you're having conversations in the hallways, take notes. I have on my business card, I have space on the back of my business cards, blank space. And I made sure that where I got my business cards printed, that this would work, where on the back, there's a nice blank space on the bottom of my business cards that allows someone to write something, or maybe I can write something on the bottom, on the back of my business cards. Like if they have a particular episode that I want to recommend to them, a resource that we've talked about, maybe it is some kind of follow-up thing I want them to do. So I might write on my card and give it to them, or maybe they want to write on it. And any card that I receive from them, I also try to write something on it. I write what we talked about. I write if there's something to follow up about. And now we have the conference apps where you can connect through those conference apps. And many of them have the opportunity to leave notes about a conversation or about a person, and take advantage of those things. And when you get back from the conference, review those things. One of the other cool things that you can do at a conference, and this is a more modern technology, and I will get out my noisy keychain to show this on the video and explain what this is. I have a little key fob on my keychain that right now has no branding on it, but this is an NFC device that if you get this near a phone, it will pop up a notification on the phone. And when that notification is opened, it will, and the nice thing about this is so much easier than QR codes. Like to use a QR code, you have to unlock your phone, open the camera app, tap on the button that it loads the page and loads the URL for you. And what the NFC thing does, it's called a podcast beacon, is you just tap your phone on it and it pops up a notification. You tap on that notification and it takes you to a web page. So on that web page, you can make that go wherever you want. What I have it do is go to a landing page where people can follow my podcast from there. But maybe during the conference, I could change it to be my contact information or a particular episode I'm frequently talking about at that conference, or maybe even simply a Google Doc where it's everything I've shared with everyone this week or my notes from my session. So this is a more modern way, but it's all about connecting with people. And then most importantly, what happens after that, the follow-up. If it is a conversation that needs to be had later, schedule that. If it's a podcast interview, schedule that there at the conference. Say, hey, let's schedule a time to do an interview. Look at your calendar. Let's sit down and pick a time and date right now.
No, I think those are brilliant things. And I think those are things that all of our audience can take away right now. I love the RF idea. That's a really brilliant idea because you're right. There's a lot of friction with the QR code, and the follow-up I think is brilliant. Now let me go to Tim's second question. And you ready for this one, Daniel? He is going to push it a little bit here on you, my friend. He says, if you could change one thing about podcasting and only one thing, what would it be?
Ooh, only one thing. I think it would be unifying the features in the podcast apps. The style of the implementation of features can vary between the apps, as these apps can have different opinions. But I would love it if just every app had cross-app comments, had ratings and reviews, had all the same features, so that we don't have to juggle different apps or switch because we want a certain feature or pressure the app developers to support a new feature. Like I'm involved in Podcasting 2.0, and one of the coolest features in Podcasting 2.0 is also one of the ones that is the most difficult to try and implement right now because there's not really an agreed standard, and that is cross-app comments. Think of it this way. The ability for you in, let's just pick a couple of podcast apps here, and theoretically here, because these don't support it right now. But let's say you're listening in Overcast. You could comment on an episode, and then someone who's listening with Pocket Casts could respond to your comment. And then someone who was watching the video on Apple Podcasts could also post their own comment or respond to the others. That's cross-app comments, where the apps can work with the comments regardless of what apps there are. That's the kind of thing I would love to see, where podcasters can engage with their audiences and audiences can engage with each other. But to get there, we need all of the apps supporting all the same features. And that's why I'm so involved with Podcasting 2.0.
Well, let's go ahead and shift then, because that's actually a great transition. So, Tim, thank you for those two questions.
I,
So,
can I ask a
go
question?
ahead, DR. I'm sorry, I didn't see you wanted to make a question. Go ahead, DR.
No, no problem. So, Daniel, 2.0 has the talk has been around for quite a long time. What is it that is getting in the way of making it a full blown, okay, it's here? Do you know what I mean? Instead of it's coming. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just not
Yeah.
on everyone's top list.
For some developers, it's that they're waiting to see what Apple does. Apple, for so many years, has been like the sheriff of the town, setting the rules and everything. But the sheriff has gotten old and he's not innovating anymore. He's not meeting the needs of the town so much anymore. So, so many developers are like, well, I'm not going to do it if Apple's not doing it. But now that Apple is supporting some of these features, like Apple supports transcripts, they support podcasting 2.0 chapters, and there could be some other support coming soon for some other things for podcasting 2.0. Now it is inspiring more developers to realize, oh, okay, if Apple is doing it, maybe I should also do it too. So for many developers, though, they're just one guy somewhere, not in his mom's basement, but some of them are pretty wealthy, but they have to prioritize what they work on. And if there's not enough of a demand for it, and I would say a polite demand, then they're not going to be interested in doing it. Like even Marco, who develops Overcast, has said before, I am not going to support these features in podcasting 2.0. Well, just recently, a few months ago, he said, here are these new features coming, and they're podcasting 2.0 features that he's building out
Oh,
support for. And it's because of the kind demand. And I say kind because don't send messages to your podcast app saying, why aren't you supporting this? You're dumb, you're stupid, I'm leaving, goodbye. No,
yeah.
kindly request that they support these things. And the more podcasters who put these features in their podcast feeds, then that shows that there is the supply for it. And the more podcast app users who request these features then are creating the demand for it. So it's a supply and demand coming from both sides. And as the podcast app developers see that, then they can start building the support and prioritizing what helps people stay inside the podcast app and what ultimately serves their podcast app users.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Well, at some point, Daniel, in your journey, your work shifted from just doing the show to building for other podcasters. So I want to talk about Podgagement first. And that is a product that I know you've been working. So what was the problem you were seeing that made you want to build Podgagement? What was broken?
Yeah. Podgagement first started as a product called My Podcast Reviews. And now, so Podgagement as a product has existed for over 12 years at this point. And I started it because back then, the only way that you could see all your reviews, let me back up, actually. In Apple Podcasts, Apple makes a podcast available in up to 175 different countries right now. Each one of those 175 countries have their own catalog of Apple Podcasts, their own copy, their own rankings. And for every podcast inside of Apple Podcasts in those different countries, there could be reviews, but they're only in that country's catalog. So back when I started My Podcast Reviews, the only way you could possibly see those reviews was through some really complicated switching around. And it wasn't even possible on the iPhone to do. Now there are some other ways that you can do it that Apple has made available, but it still takes so many clicks to go through looking for your ratings and reviews. And then you have to try and manually keep track of what's new, what's old, what have you already seen, all of that stuff. So My Podcast Reviews was originally created to do all of that for you automatically. Check all 175 places, plus some other apps and catalogs to collect those reviews and notify you when you have them, saving you all kinds of clicks on your own and saving you lots of time. Now, Podgagement, the reason I rebranded it and built it completely over from scratch is to make it work faster and to make it do a whole lot more, because now it's not just about reviews, it's about engagement. So I wanted to help podcasters use their reviews to more deeply engage with their audience and use feedback to do that and be able to track this engagement. While there are many places that allow you to measure the breadth of your audience and how wide your reach is, I want to focus on the depth. However big your audience is, deepening that relationship with your audience through reviews, through feedback, through search, through networking with other podcasters. And these are all features that then I've built into Podgagement to help you supercharge your engagement with your audience. Because it's not just collecting these things or that these things exist that matters. It's what you do with them and how you inspire your audience to take action.
So let's talk about what Podgagement actually does. How does a podcaster use it on a day-to-day basis? What does it help them do? Who's it built for? And give us the, about 30,000 foot view, and then exactly why we would want to get this product.
So Podgagement is for podcasters who want to engage with their audiences and track their success beyond just the downloads. It starts by checking your ratings and reviews in 175 different countries, plus a few other apps. And there aren't very many other apps that support ratings and reviews, but we check them and notify you automatically when you receive a new rating or review. So you can do something with that. You can embed it on your website. You could copy it to your show notes so you could read that review, thank that audience member in your podcast. You can generate images with them. So none of this having to copy, paste, take screenshots, all of this stuff. With just a few clicks, you can generate an image in multiple aspect ratios. So a square image perfect for Instagram, a tall image perfect for Pinterest, a wide image perfect for video, even that perfect, precise aspect ratio that you need for social networks. We also have that in there. So just with a few clicks, you can download this high quality image, control it a little bit, get some branding of your own so it looks great as well. Then you can use those reviews to do things in your podcast to deeper engage with your audience, which I'll mention how to do that in a moment. The other thing that you can do in Podgagement is collect feedback from your audience. So it's not just the reviews, because in places like Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review only once. You can edit the review, but you can't leave multiple reviews. It's just the one review that you're working with. So that's where feedback comes in. And Podgagement provides a landing page that podcasters can use. It's very speakable. Like mine is podcastfeedback.com/audacity. And people go there and it's very focused on one goal, and that is sending feedback. You can write your feedback or you can record your feedback through that. And then for the podcaster, it transcribes that, sends them the audio file so they can play that in their podcast if they want. They also get the transcript so they can see briefly what the feedback is about. And so these two kinds of audience engagement, reviews and feedback, when you include them in your podcast, it does three different things I'll mention briefly. One is for that person who sent that review or that feedback, they now feel like a celebrity. It's like, hey, mom, I was on a podcast. You got to check this out. They want to tell other people about it. They have more deeply engaged now with the podcast, so they're going to be more likely to stick around as well. The other thing it does is for other people listening, they suddenly think, hey, wait a minute. I want my question answered. I want my review read. I want my joke told. I want my story shared. So they get in on the action too. By including some engagement in your podcast, it inspires other engagement as well. The third thing it does is for everyone else, they see you engaging with your audience. And maybe you are mentioning, oh, so-and-so from Zimbabwe sent this review of the podcast. And someone from England sent me this feedback. Here it is. I'm going to play it for you. You can hear their lovely British accent. And here's someone from South Africa who asked this question. So someone else is out there listening to this and realizing, wow, she's a big deal. She's got these listeners all over the world. She's answering their questions. And she took the time to answer my question too. Wow, this is amazing. So you're deepening the relationship. You are empowering your audience to spread more for you. So Podgagement is providing that for you. The simple landing pages, like the lovethepodcast.com is the other landing page that is for collecting ratings and reviews for your podcast. Beyond that, we also track your ranking in all of the global charts, nearly 34,000 charts out there that you could rank in. And we're checking all of that for you because ain't nobody got time for that to check it themselves. We check that automatically and track your ranking in that over time. We've got years of history behind that. A brand new feature just launched is that you can now add in the search terms you want your podcast to be found for, and we will track that inside of Apple Podcasts. And this tracks it very accurately, even down to separating it into the different search results that Apple Podcast shows, like the top results, the podcast results, and the episode results. We track that. So you can see how your podcast ranks for those search terms. You can experiment with things like adding new episodes that use those search terms and see how that adjusts your ranking. We also do a thing that I call networking, where when you look at your podcast in Apple Podcasts, scroll down to the bottom, you might see a list of you might also like or listeners also subscribe to. This is outgoing networking, where it's the podcast recommended from yours, algorithmically recommended by the platform. I call that outgoing networking. And yes, you can see that yourself. But the other thing that we do is we track among the millions of podcasts out there, which of them are pointing back in to your podcast. That is something that would be impossible for you to track yourself. And the reason I call that networking is because that's what it helps you to do. You can see these are podcasts where you have some kind of crossover audience. Maybe these are similar topics, but what it can tell you is these are other podcasts with whom you should network. You could collaborate, you could cross promote, you could cross guest, even just some simple competitive analysis if you wanted to. But it's a networking feature that we track inside of Podgagement. And there's more landing pages to help you grow your audience, and more coming in the future, even to help you monetize your audience and collect support from your audience. It's all really about supercharging that engagement.
Thank you, Daniel. I do have a question from Sid Meadows. Sid, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Great to see you guys today. Daniel, I've been using your product since 2011.
Yeah.
No, 2021. Sorry, 2021. And I absolutely love it. I started when it was my podcast reviews, and it was such a great way. I loved getting that email when I could see that I got a new review. And not too long ago, I went in and used your branding tool to create the snippets of them and put them on my website, which was also
Nice.
super easy because before we were doing that in Canva and
Yeah.
copying it, going into Canva, we made our own graphic, and you just made it so easy. I'm like, in one click, I have an image in my branding colors and downloaded it and put it up on our website. So thank you for the product. I'm really enjoying it. Though I don't go out there very much for lots of different reasons. I just logged in listening to you talk, and um, but I'm super interested in learning about the podcast SEO and putting in my keywords and see how I'm doing there. What my question for you is, why just Apple? Why not other platforms? Because I know, and we've talked about it here in the past, that Apple is in the search. When people go into search, they're looking at the title of your show and the title of your episode and not anything else. And then Spotify is looking at other things, and who knows what all the other ones are looking at. So why just Apple? And do you have a plan to expand beyond that for the SEO part?
Yeah, and the reason why it's just Apple now is this feature just launched. Apple was the easiest to support. And the reason I prioritize Apple for everything that I do first, that comes to Apple first, is because Apple is still the number one true podcast app. But there will be also support for Spotify coming soon, and then bringing in support for other apps and systems as well. It's just Apple was the one I wanted to support most, especially since the whole regional thing with Apple makes so much impossible for podcasters to do, and with the separate catalogs and everything. And so that's why I like to support Apple first in their features. And when I say support Apple first, that doesn't mean you have to have an Apple device to use Podgagement or any of my tools, but I'm supporting the Apple Podcast ecosystem first. So yes, other platforms are coming soon.
Great, Sid. And Sid, you took away my question I was going to ask Daniel next, which is great, and that is to use a real example. So it sounds like, Sid, you are the real example using the product.
Yeah, I really enjoy the product. We do have on every landing, we have a podcast page and then a landing page for each episode. And on the landing page and on each episode page, we have the Love My Podcast button for people to click and easily leave a review rather than having to go directly into the player to do it as an encouragement. What I found as it relates to reviews, I get them when I ask for them, not
Right.
just because I have a button on my landing pages, right? But
Yes.
I really enjoy, like, everything is right there for me. I can go and look, I can see the rankings, and now you've added keywords. It's going to help make me more informed. and help us look at our strategy of what we're doing with keywords. So I'm a big fan of the product, yes, and it's extremely affordable. Ralph, we were talking about tech stacks the other day, and what are you paying for? Podgagement is extremely affordable.
Thank you so much,
That's
Sid.
what was my question was, is there tiers, and what is the difference between the tiers if there are tiers, and what are the price points?
Yeah. So it has a very astronomical theme to it. So the tiers are Astro, Constellation, and there's a new tier coming in the future called Pathfinder. Astro focuses on just your ratings and reviews. Think star, Astro. That's what Astro means, is star. So it focuses on only your ratings and reviews. If that's all that matters to you, that's the plan for you. And that's at $9 a month per podcast. And you get 2 months free if you pay per year. And there's a free trial for all of this as well. So you can try it free and see how you like it for your podcast. Constellation is the next tier up, and that adds on all of the other features right now that are in Podgagement. So that's the charts and rankings feature, the networking feature, the SEO feature, the monetization feature when that comes soon for you to be able to collect money from your audience and let them donate or support your podcast. And some other features that I have planned for that. The feedback feature, I can't remember if I mentioned that, but the voicemail feedback and the messaging, and also the ability for people to leave reviews directly to your podcast instead of having to create an account and go out somewhere else. That's all in the Constellation tier. The Pathfinder tier. So Astro and Constellation are definitely focused on the podcaster. The upcoming Pathfinder tier will be focused more on the researcher who might have their own podcast, or maybe even a guest expert who might have their own podcast or might not, but they want to research other podcasts. So while Astro and Constellation focus on you add your podcast and we will track it automatically on a recurring basis, let you know what changes, what comes in through your podcast for you, Pathfinder will be more for I'm a guest. I want to find podcasts out there. I want to run a quick report. I want to see who are the top 10 podcasts that do this, or I want to see all of the podcasts on business that have a minimum of 100 global ratings and reviews and have appeared in the chart at least once. So it allows you to do more research to find these podcasts or discover the relationships between different podcasts, like that networking feature, but more focused on the kind of the research or the analysis aspect of it, even if you don't have your own podcast. That's the Pathfinder feature that will be coming later on. And pricing for that is not available yet. Oh, pricing for Constellation, I didn't mention that. That's $19 a month per podcast, or you get, again, 2 months free if you pay yearly.
And we're going to put links to this in the show notes today, Daniel, but very affordable, I would say. I'm the money guy on the show, and I think all of those plans are very affordable. Now, I want to talk a little bit, since we've only got about 15 minutes left this morning, I want to talk about Pod Chapters, because that's another one of the products that you've built specifically for podcasters. And where did the idea come from for that one, Daniel?
I'm the type that I like to innovate more than invent. I mentioned that earlier. And in my own podcasting workflow, to add chapters and a transcript to my podcast, I realized I was working across 5 different apps or more and taking about 30 minutes to get this stuff done. That's a very small piece of the technology stack. And at some point, I just thought, why don't I just build something to try and automate this more for myself? And as I started building it, and the first time I saw it work, I realized this is magical. This other podcasters might want this too. So at its core, Pod Chapters is about creating chapters for your podcast, which present all kinds of opportunities for your audience that at a glance, they can see what the episode is about. They can skip around, yes, if they want to. But here's the thing. Many people are worried about, oh, if I use chapters, people are going to skip my ads. If you're worried about that, they're already skipping your ads. But here's what's cool about chapters is they can actually make your ads or any other calls to action more actionable, and they can make your episodes more engaging within the podcast app, because chapters at their core can include 3 things: a title, that's necessary, and it's a title at a specific time. So it's your outline, basically, like your notes if you're giving a public presentation. A chapter can also include optionally an image. So if you have a photography podcast or you're talking about a movie, you could have pictures from different scenes that you're talking about display in the podcast app while you're talking about that moment. The chapters can also have, the third thing is an optional link. That's where your calls to action come in. So that could be a link to your website to send feedback to you. It could be a link to your love page for Podgagement to send ratings and reviews. It could be a link to your sponsor. During your sponsor segment, you could have the title of the chapter be the call to action. The image could be a picture of that product. And then the URL could be the link for people to visit that sponsor. So it's making things like that more interactive, more engaging, more actionable too. So pod chapters can transcribe your podcast, or you can BYOT, bring your own transcript. And then you can go in and you can manually add your chapters if you want to, with, I think, the easiest interface ever to do it. But where it really shines is using the AI powered features, where you provide the transcript or let it transcribe your podcast for you. And then there are two ways that you can do this. One is you can have it recommend chapters for you. It looks through the transcript, figures out what looks like might be a good chapter, and it can suggest those as chapters. And then once you get those suggestions, you can edit them, change them however you want to. The other thing, and this is what I very much wanted, is I know what I want my chapters to be. I have an outline that I talk from in my podcast, and that outline is what I want my chapters to be. I just don't know where I want those chapters to be. So I call it outline to chapters, where you paste in your outline and it finds where to put your outline and turn it into chapters for you. And then when you have those chapters, so you upload your MP3 file to it to edit, transcribe everything. Then it adds the chapters in multiple formats. So you download the MP3 back from it, and that's the file that you upload to your media host, your podcast hosting provider and such. And it provides the chapters in Podcasting 2.0 format. It provides the transcript if you have it do that for you. And it provides the chapters in multiple other formats, even YouTube timestamp format. So you can copy and paste that over to YouTube or other platforms. All of this to make this style of consumption so much easier. And for the audience, it helps them follow along much easier, especially since many people listen. And Ralph and DR, I'm sure this has never, ever happened to you. So I'll just say, I'll put myself on the spot. Sometimes, I confess, sometimes I've gotten distracted while listening to a podcast. Never happened to you guys, right? And sometimes I've even forgotten what they just said. So when you have the chapters, that can provide some extra context for people so that they can look down and see, oh yeah, we're on point 2 of this 5-point outline. But wait a minute, what was point 1? So instead of their having to skip back to listen again to what was point 1, they can just look at the chapters and look up and see, oh yeah, that was point 1. Now I remember it. We're on point 2 right now. Oh, and here are points 3 and 4 coming. I'm really looking forward to those. So it helps them follow along with the content better, get that extra context. And like even in-dash systems like CarPlay and Android Auto can display this chapter information from the podcast app. So even while people are driving, they can glance over and see, oh yeah, that's the point we're on. Or they could even see the picture that you're talking about.
No, that's brilliant. And my question for you, Daniel, is how many apps, you talked about Podcasting 2.0, which obviously would support chapters, but what apps right now are supporting chapters, and do you see that adoption growing? And why do you think it's so beneficial for both the host and for the listener?
Yeah, a lot of apps support chapters in various standards, and PodChapters supports all of these. Like for many years, we've had MP3 chapters embedded in the MP3 file. That's why you have to upload your MP3 and then you download it back from PodChapters. Apple has supported that for years, and many other podcast apps do too. Apple now supports the Podcasting 2.0 chapters, and more apps do too. It's about 2 dozen, just off the top of my head, 2 dozen apps that support the Podcasting 2.0 chapters. But with pod chapters, you're making the embedded MP3 chapters. You're getting the Podcasting 2.0 chapters format. You're also even getting the Podlove simple chapters if you need that, which Spotify supports that. I think they might be the only popular app that supports that. But you're getting these chapters in these multiple formats, so all of the apps that support them can use them. The most important being the MP3 chapters and the Podcasting 2.0 chapters. The MP3 chapters are inside the MP3 file. The Podcasting 2.0 chapters are in an external file, which we can even host for you in Pod Chapters. So what's the benefit of this to the audience and to the podcaster? Well, the podcaster, for any of your calls to action, you're making it more actionable. Instead of telling people and they're having to remember a link, you could add that as a chapter. Just keep in mind, maybe not everyone is able to look at the chapters in that moment, or their app might not support chapters. So don't depend on it, but certainly you can give both. You can say, visit my website at theaudacitytopodcast.com or click the chapter link that's displaying right now. So you're making your calls to action, whatever those calls to action are, sponsors, sending feedback, leaving ratings and reviews, visiting the website, sharing the podcast episode, or visiting a sponsor, any of these kinds of things. Affiliate links, even. Those can be in your chapters. So you're making it more actionable for your audience. You're making the content more easily consumable and memorable for your audience because they can follow along with your outline. They can jump back if they need to review certain points. They can see what's coming and get excited about it. And so that transitions then to the audience. For the audience, they get to see that content. They can more easily take action on the things that you're talking about. And especially for audio podcasts that are audio only, this presents the opportunity to potentially display certain things. Like you could display a photo. If your podcast is a programming podcast, you could make an image of your code and display that. If you podcast about Bible things and you have a Bible verse or any kind of quotation, you could put that in an image and display that in the chapter too. So like I go to church, I'm a Christian, and when I'm sitting listening to the pastor preaching, I've got my Bible open before me. There are many times he's preaching and I look down, I want to see the verse again. And I look up and I'm listening, I want to see the verse again. I'm listening, I want to see the verse again. And so for your podcast, you could do that same kind of thing, whether it's a quotation, a statistic you're displaying, a graph, a chart, a Bible verse, anything like that, so people can see that while you are talking about it. It makes it so much more memorable, easier to consume and understand. And that's what Pod Chapters is about.
I think that's great. And Tim has another question. I love this question. It says, how can we encourage our audience to adopt and use podcasting 2.0 features? How do we communicate what's in it for me, Daniel? I think that's a great question. Thank you for sharing that, Tim. Go ahead, Daniel. What do you think?
Yeah, it's all the benefit for the audience. And that's the thing that we need to focus on most is how does this benefit them? Like take chapters, for example, is you could tell your audience about these things. Like if you're listening in a modern podcast app that supports chapters, you'll be able to see this image I'm talking about, or you'll be able to click this link. Now, still make sure you're giving them a fallback option because you never want to alienate your audience. Same thing goes with if you're publishing both audio and video. Try to make sure that you are describing things in a way that the listening audience can do. Like earlier, when I was talking about my business card, I was actually holding it up so that people watching the video could see exactly what I was referring to. But I spoke about it in a way that the listening audience would understand what I'm talking about. And in fact, I did it in a way that the listening audience wouldn't feel alienated or called out for listening instead of watching. I didn't say, if you look here at the bottom, or I didn't say, if you can't see what I'm talking about, this is what I'm doing. No, I just said at the bottom of the business card on the back, I have a blank space. So for people looking at the video, they see exactly what I'm talking about. For people listening, they hear me describing it in a way that honors and respects them. So bringing it back to the features is you really have to sell your audience on the benefit to them and certain things that just look at the features. Like you can go to podcasting2.org to learn about the different features of Podcasting 2.0 and pick something that you think would matter to your audience. Chapters are a good one. Maybe it's transcripts. Maybe it's something else that matters. And you can let your audience know if you don't see these chapters, maybe try a new podcast app. At newpodcastapps.com is a site out there that some people collect for this. So really focus on the benefit to them, not just, oh, we do this cool feature, but how does this help them? How would they enjoy this?
I think that's a great way to say it, Daniel, because you've got to get there. You got to sell them on the benefits to them. Now, we're getting ready to wrap up here, Daniel, but let me ask you this question. what's next for you? Anything you're building or excited about that you want to share? Oh, and before I forget to mention, what is the cost of pod chapters? And then answer that next question I just gave you. Sorry about that. I got out of order there a little bit.
Yeah. So pod chapters, I'll tell you the cost for that is it depends on which amount of usage that you want for pod chapters. There is what I call the basic plan that allows you to add your chapters manually. If you totally want to do things manually, add your ID3 tags manually and all of that, it is $349 a month if you pay yearly, or if you pay monthly, it's $499 a month. What I really recommend, though, is the Smart plan. And the Smart plan comes at different levels depending on how much AI usage you need in it. And the Smart plan starts at $9.99 per month if you pay monthly, or if you pay yearly, that brings it down to $6.99 per month. And that includes the AI features and enough AI credits to transcribe and chapter up to 5 hours of audio. But if you BYOT, bring your own transcript, then you can get a lot more hours of usage from that, because most of the AI credits are spent on generating the transcript. And then there's a higher plan too, a Smart Pro, where if you're doing lots of podcasts for others, especially, and there are some agency features built into pod chapters as well that allow you to make it easier to edit for different podcasts and save presets and such. But then you might want to consider the Smart Pro plan that has a lot higher AI usage with that. What was the other? Oh, what's coming next?
Yeah, before you answer that, Janaid would like to answer a question, and then we'll come right back to that. So Janaid, go ahead and answer your question, and then we'll come back to that next steps for you, Daniel.
Good morning, gentlemen. This has been an awesome conversation. Daniel, really loved all the stuff that you worked on. I probably met you a couple times over the years, but I didn't really make the connection. Really love the applications that you built over the years. Pod Chapter sounds really awesome. You mentioned that you've been part of Podcasting 2.0, and I was wondering how can somebody join that program or that group? Because I've been working on a software as well for podcasters, and I would love to, contribute to Podcasting 2.0 as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Janaid.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Janaid. The easiest way is if you go to podcastindex.social, and Podcast Index is the thing that kind of started Podcasting 2.0 as a separate standalone podcast catalog. So podcastindex.social is the website, and it's a Mastodon social network. So it's kind of like X or Twitter, and you can join there and just start joining the conversation. That's the ideal entry point. It's the easiest place to enter. There is a GitHub repository where most of the in-depth conversation happens about proposals and technologies and how the tags will actually work. But simply mentioning GitHub is scary to some people. So you don't have to join that, but you can join the podcastindex.social site and join the conversations there. And that's the great place where the developers and many of the podcasters supporting this and participating in it will participate there in the conversation, watching for when you post things there. So you can ask your questions, you can post ideas there. Some people might see an idea and be able to run with it and say, yeah, I'd love to help implement that idea or flesh that idea out to make it into something that we could maybe support. That's the ideal place to go. And to learn more just about Podcasting 2.0 in general, podcasting2.org gives you the information. And also that links out to the Podcast Index social site.
Thank you, Daniel.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I've actually been browsing around the GitHub because I'm a developer. So
Okay.
Thank you so much. I will check out Podcasting Social and hopefully see you there.
Yeah.
All right, Daniel, so we're coming to the close here. So what's next for you? Anything new you're building or excited about?
Yeah, for Podgagement, the next big feature, I want to continue building out the SEO feature, adding the other platforms. I think I believe Tim or someone else had asked about that. So Spotify will be the next platform to support. But the other big thing I want to bring about is the option for podcasters to have a nice landing page where they can collect money from their audience. And Ralph, I know you're a CPA, so I've learned from you, avoid the word donation, whether you want to call it a tip, receiving value, giving back to the podcast, whatever you want to call that.
Thank you, Daniel. Right. Don't use the word donation. I appreciate that very much.
So whatever you want to call it, I like the term, by the way, give back, because that kind of implies some sense of reciprocity that here I've given some value to you. Would you consider giving back some value to the podcast? This new feature will provide a page to allow you to do that in a way that will support different things, like people could pay through a credit card, or it can link out to other things. Like if you have a Patreon or a Buy Me a Coffee or something like that, this can be a central page to link to those, as well as receive things directly and include a message from them. I just want to make that easier for podcasters, because even like right now for myself, I'm just using PayPal just because it was easiest to create a redirect link to a PayPal page where if people want to support me financially, they can do it that way. But I really want to create this new page, and that's the next big thing coming for me that I'm working on.
Well, Daniel, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. You want to go ahead and tell people how they can get in touch with you, the best ways to do that, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm on pretty much every social network as the Daniel J. Lewis. And you can listen to my podcast, The Audacity to Podcast, at theaudacitytopodcast.com. And that also links out to my other products and services that I know Ralph said that the links will be associated with this episode. So I'd love to have you on board trying out my products. Podgagement and Podchapters both have free trials to them. So you can try it completely free. Try Podchapters on your next episode. Try Podgagement for a couple of weeks. See how it tracks your ratings, reviews, rankings, SEO, all of that stuff. I'd love to have you as a customer, or even just have you as a listener learning how to make your podcast better.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Make sure you join us tomorrow. We're going to get into our news discussion. So until that, everybody, make it a great day today. Thank you so much for being here this morning.